What's the one message you'd want them to take away with after listening to this podcast today?
I came up with a saying a few years ago, which is everybody's making up everything all the time. And that's exactly. And it doesn't matter whether you're Tim Cook at Apple or whether it's, you and I here. Everybody, uh, I mean, just in life, we're all making it up, but especially in the business world, we're all making it up as we go.
Welcome, Third Rock listeners, to the Branding Laboratory. I'm your host, Deevo, Chief Experience Officer for the brand Storyteller and the Fusion Creative Brands. And each week, I have the privilege of speaking with extraordinary leaders and entrepreneurs who are reshaping the way industries work. These conversations go way beyond the surface to explore the core philosophies, the lessons, and the challenges that define the brands that we admire today. And one of the greatest rewards of this podcast is the opportunity to share the insights of some of the brightest minds in business, people who are passionate about pushing boundaries and redefining what's possible. And as I always say, the stories we tell are the brands we build. And this show is a testament to the power of that concept. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Branding Laboratory. I'm your host, Deevo, and excited to be back for another episode of The Lab. Have you ever heard of someone whose story really resonated with you? And the minute you hear it, you're sort of like, yeah, dude, this cat gets it. Today's guest, Colin Hirdman, started his first company a week after graduating college. It wasn't a side hustle. It wasn't a logo on Canva. It was a real business. And since then, he's done what most people only talk about: build, build, build. Through his company, Monkey Island Ventures, a name that sounds like a brand, but was actually a park that he and his co-founders played at as kids. That's a cool story. We're going to hear about that. He's helped launch over a dozen new businesses. And it's not about exits or earnings for Colin. It's about creating connections, which is why we invited him on the show, and creativity and innovation and helping other business owners build their business. It's something that I'm really emphatically devoted to myself in terms of coaching and consulting. And so when I read Colin's story, I was like, we got to get this dude on the show. Right now, he's focused on a new operation called Rainmaker. It's a company that turns LinkedIn from a black hole, and trust me, it is a black hole if you don't know how to work it properly, turning it into a black hole, into a lead machine. So we're going to really find out about that and sort of learn what he's doing on LinkedIn, and hopefully steal some ideas from him that we can use for ourselves. But today we're going to talk about Colin, his business, how he built what he built, see if we can't pick up some hacks and some insights and some tips on how to grow our own businesses. And really, I'm excited to sort of have him on the show. So stay tuned for this insightful and intriguing podcast. I was reading your story yesterday in preparation for the show, and I just sort of like this whole idea. You started a business right out of college. I was always an entrepreneur as well, but I didn't know I was an entrepreneur. And I've done
Hmm.
all these little things before I even became an entrepreneur, but I never realized that was sort of the route. It's sort of interesting. And I'm going somewhere with this. I never had any mentors or guides or anything like that, right? And so all the things that I did were just sort of like me just kind of naturally falling into that space, right? I'm going to start a lawn mowing company. And the next thing you know, I'm going to start a television station in college. And the next thing you know, I started a paintball. And I had all these little side gigs that I was running, but none of them sort of put together in a mosaic for me. It was like, bro, you should probably become an entrepreneur. No, I graduated. I took a dumbass job straight out of college because they paid me a lot of money. Did that for 15 years, yada, yada, yada. So, anyhow, enough
Yeah.
about me. How did you, before the headlines, before the business, before everything you're doing on LinkedIn and everything else, before the startups and Rainmaker, who were you before you became a founder? How did you sort of like matriculate into this idea of starting your own business and becoming an entrepreneur and actually knowing that you were an entrepreneur?
I was a fully confused college student. So I was halfway through my junior year, and I was talking with my dad, and I still hadn't declared a major because had no idea. And I said, Dad, I said, why don't I just drop out of college, go into the Marines, and then see where life takes me. And he's like, Colin, he says, my dad was a Marine, and he says, you don't need the discipline. I needed that. He said, you need to just finish your bachelor's degree and then see where life takes you. So I declared criminal justice so I could get out in 4 years, graduated with that. And then when about halfway through my senior year, I was at my dad's 50th birthday party, and I met a guy there who had known my dad for a long time, and we're just chatting and things like that. And a few weeks later, my dad approached me and said, "Hey, Mike's wondering if you'd ever be interested in like going into business." And I'm like, I've never really thought about it, but sure, why not? So we met, and he already had a small IT company and he wanted to start this other company on the side. And I pretty much was the one that did that. And so I started off in just like a cubicle and grew the company and had it for about a decade. And then I ended up selling that in 2006. Then 2007 is when I started Monkey Island Ventures with my two business partners. But I'll pause there. So that's how I got into it.
Um, First of all, I appreciate that cadence pause you just did. Most people just go on and on. I have to be like, all right, I'm going to be a dick for a second and cut you off because we need to break down some of the things you did.
All
It's
right.
interesting that you had sort of, first of all, I love that you had a father that guided you in that. I'm really jealous of that situation. I've always sort of looked back at my situation, did not have a father like that. And I have two teenage daughters now. And it's like, I always wanted to make sure that I was there in that capacity to help guide and mentor them whenever,
Mm,
wherever possible. And so I'm always really
yeah.
sort of by being transparent, envious of people who had that. So it's a big necessity, and it really kind of gives you a leg up on things, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that just because you have a mentor or a father who gives a shit about you, you actually do something with your life at that point. Because most people, when they graduate college, especially in today's market, they're still nursing hangovers, they're still partying, they're still
Yeah.
going out and just doing the things that don't really ultimately matter, and that may be part of their journey. But I love the fact that you sort of had the insights and stepped into that space and actually lived and breathed what you wanted to do. And I don't know if that was from your upbringing or if that was from your father sort of kind of distilling these things into you. But have you thought about yourself as a child and your upbringing and some of the habits and the disciplines and the things that you learned that may have sort of guided you into this space early on?
That's an interesting question because entrepreneurship and business was not at all something that I was exposed to.
Mm.
My dad, he had his own private practice, but he was never like what you'd call more of a traditional entrepreneur. So it was, I think, in a lot of ways, just kind of pure luck that I fell into it. And I think the reason why I'm pretty optimistic. I'm fairly risk averse, but I'm still fine taking on risk, as
Mm.
long as, there's a little bit of, calculation on it and I can see, benefits versus, risks. And so I think that's probably what it is more than anything. And then, I wouldn't consider myself like a great entrepreneur either. I would consider myself someone that just grinds it out and is persistent, and has taken advantage of the situations when they've come at me. And, it's probably nothing more or less than that.
Well, I don't know what metrics are qualifiably tied to being a great entrepreneur. I would say one of them is longevity and sustainability and building something that actually adds value. And it sounds like you're doing that. So if that puts you into the category of great, then own it,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Humility is definitely one of the characteristics that you learn growing up. So it's time to own that, man. You got to step up and say, I
Absolutely.
love talking to entrepreneurs who have really actually built something. And it's one of the reasons that I built this podcast.
Mm,
And one of the things that has always been near and dear to my heart, especially as I started to grow my businesses and really figure out how I could best show up in the world, is my belief system and my philosophies. Because I believe that how you show up as an individual really is going to drive how you show up as a business owner or an entrepreneur. I mean, it literally will show up in everything, right? And so
right.
beliefs are really a big thing to me. And one of the things that I work with my clients on is like, what's your belief system look like? What do you believe in? What are the things that are lines in the sands for you? What are your negotiables? What are your non-negotiables? When you think about yourself as an early entrepreneur, and
Mm.
I'm assuming this was about 20 plus years ago, yeah, roughly? No,
30 years ago.
30. I was just being kind on
Yeah.
the age.
Yep.
Women always love that when I say to them, like, wow, you're really nice. But anyhow, 20, 30 years ago, when you first
Yep.
started out this business, you had core beliefs that you brought into the business. When you look back at those beliefs, first of all, before we get to what they are, what were some of the early ideas you had about business that have completely shifted when you look at yourself today?
Um, that's a good question. It's interesting because um that first experience was was really good in a few ways. Number one, I didn't really have any preconceived notions of like what an entrepreneur should be or what a business should be, other than I feel like I'm a really responsible person. I also feel like I'm fairly, creative. And that first business that we built, it started in like 95. and it was a direct mail data processing business. And that industry I, didn't really enjoy per se. So in 99, we started to do email marketing and web design and custom development and things like that. So I was kind of starting to lean into tech, which was much more interesting to me. And so that company became more of a marketing communications company. And I ended up selling that in 2006. And so
Hmm.
what some advice that I would give, anyone that's an aspiring entrepreneur is the next chapter, and we can talk a little bit more about that when we get into it with Monkey Island and my business partners there. That one leaned into even more kind of leading bleeding edge tech. What I realize now is that starting a business in a industry that uh, is is needed, even though you have a lot of competition, you can still go and carve out a space. You can still build a business off of that, generate revenue, generate income for you and your family. There's nothing wrong with that. I think sometimes people want to associate entrepreneurship with some, type of like, influencer and, massive growth and scale and all these kinds of things. Yeah, that can happen, but it's also incredibly difficult. And so I think that's something that, more so than how I entered entrepreneurship, because honestly, I didn't know anything about it. I was 22 years old and I still probably didn't even really know myself that well at that point in time. So I think more than anything, it's going into a business in an established industry, where I could, fairly easily land new clients and build a sustainable company from there.
I appreciate that answer, and I think I guess there's one thing I want to unpack. I think a lot of times people do think that if you're an entrepreneur, it's all glitz and glamour, and you're out there. I had a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, several years ago, say he wished he had my life because all I do is I work a couple hours a week, and then I just I travel, and I was like,
Oh my God.
are you talking to me, man?
Yeah.
Dude, you go to 9 to 5 every morning and that's it. Like I'm literally, you don't have any idea what the grind is, especially launching a new business. And sometimes it's not glitz and glamour, it's really
No.
boring. And
Yep.
I'm a firm believer that if your business and what you're doing is boring, that means there's some things that you've really systematized and really gotten on track. And because
Yep.
it doesn't always have to be like glitz and glamour, right? And so it's an interesting conversation to have around that because I do think a lot of people, especially early entrepreneurs, they don't tie into the process of like the rigor and the consistency and the discipline, which are boring words
Yep.
on paper, but ultimately lead to something bigger. So I asked that question about the beliefs because I want people to understand when they listen to you and they listen to this podcast, not just what you've built, but
Yeah.
who had to be built in the process. Because through the
Mm.
process of growing your businesses, you've changed as an individual, right? And so I want to go back to that original question. When you look at early Colin 30 years ago, the man you were then, who
Mhm.
who are you today and what has really shifted in how you show up in the world and what you believe in?
Yeah. I think I think the foundation of who I have always been like ethically has stayed the same, right? Like I'm not do I would never go into business doing things that are illegal in any manner or taking advantage of my customers. I grind it out. Like I will show up, day in and day out, for however much time is needed. I've always been that way. I think now I'm more at peace with the types of businesses that I'm getting into. And a big part of it is also the journey of doing it,
Mm,
right? That first company, I was pretty much on my own. And now, having done it with my business partners, it's such a different experience. It's and I think leaning into that human experience of what it is, to just be alive and to live your life day in and day out. So much of your life is in business, right? Doing work, and um, knowing that I'm getting a richer experience because of the people that I'm doing business with. That's actually more important than the actual businesses themselves. So I think
mhm.
that's something that has come across to me as a realization, and just being more at peace with kind of letting things happen. and not feeling like I can control so
Mm.
much because you can't. Most of
Hmm.
it is just beyond your control. So you just gotta show up, put in the hard work, do the best job you can, not beat yourself up, know that mistakes are going to happen, that failure is not a bad word. You need to just learn from that and just keep moving forward.
Yeah, failure is an opportunity to learn something about yourself if you're listening, right?
Absolutely.
One of the things you said, and it's interesting because everyone I ask says or has sort of the same ethos around them, is it sounds like, you're in business, A, because you love what you're doing, B, you're also in a servant capacity, making someone else's life better by doing what you're doing. And
Mhm.
and and that's sort of for me is at the cornerstone of leadership, right? And
Yeah.
and if you talk to any successful entrepreneur, it really just not even successful people who are in that space, at the core of their definition of leadership, there's always that sort of aptitude about serving in some way, shape, or form and making someone else's life better in some way, shape, or form. I'm just curious if you have a take on leadership yourself and what it
Yeah.
means to you.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that learned early on, as the owner founder is, you're always on stage, right? You're always being looked at by your employees, as indicators of how you behave and how you act. That was really acute, for me to understand that. Um, so I think, that's probably one of the biggest takeaways. The other thing, around leadership, is, really trying to lean in assisting and helping your team be the best they can possibly be. And I think that even was something that I brought into the hiring practice. Like, I've never been worried about bringing in people, a lot smarter than me, a lot better fit in certain areas of the business, and just letting that part go and letting them kind of take off. And I think that kind of whole servant leadership, and that whole ethos, really can fall into, even the way you think about, like sales, like the whole go giver mindset, right? Where really leaning into, giving value, helping other people out first. And through doing that, through teaching and education and those types of things, not only you're setting yourself up as a thought leader, but, you're building relationships. And, that's really, um, one of the primary drivers of business is building relationships. So just kind of to tie all that up, that leadership, perspective is so important. It's something that you can continually get better at. It's something that I think a lot of organizations, don't pay enough attention to. And, I think that's something that we've tried to bring into our companies, including bringing in, like, third parties to come in and talk about leadership and kind of upskill our team around that.
Hmm. Relationships are, I was on a podcast recently as a guest, and they asked me a similar question in terms of what are the things that I know now and the things that I didn't know then or that I had never really paid much attention to early in my career.
Hmm.
And building relationships was probably top of my list because I don't know that early in my entrepreneurial journey, I gave it a lot of attention. I was more because I came from the corporate world
Yeah.
and my competitive upbringing, it was sort of like I had to be the best at whatever I did, and I'm sure as fuck not going to share any of my secrets with anybody else, type of thing. And I look back now at my trajectory, and while I had success, I look what I'm doing now, and at the cornerstone of everything, it centers around this idea of building a community around yourself, and
Yeah.
and how you can support each other and make each other bigger, better, stronger, faster that way. And I
Mhm.
didn't do that as an early entrepreneur. And I'm assuming it sounds like you did the opposite of me. Like you were always involved in some way, shape, or form in building communities. But how important is that for early entrepreneurs or just entrepreneurs in general to really focus in on the relationships that you have and not view people so much as competition, but as collaboration?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. Um, the from like a competition standpoint, if you're, really interested in what you do, and you really have your clients and customers' best interest at heart, um, and if you feel like your business is innovating, you shouldn't be worried about competition. You should, I think, err on the side of, um, you know, being more, um, open, sharing more, helping establish yourself and your company as like a thought leader. So I think that's incredibly important to um, bring that into kind of the ethos of how you think about how you do your work in your business.
Hmm. Totally agree. You've co-founded multiple ventures. It sounds like with childhood friends, and I want to learn a little bit about that because I had some experience working with very close, intimate relationships in a previous business, and it did not work out so well for me.
Mm.
I'm curious how and it seems to be rare because the more people I interview, the more people have similar stories to me. So I'm curious, what was the secret, or what is the secret to you for building and staying in partnership for so long with childhood friends, intimate
Yep.
relations, etc.?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and I'll start by saying, you know, if you kind of follow some of what I'm talking about in kind of my relationship with Josh and Zach, I think um, you can have a more rewarding entrepreneurial journey because it's really difficult doing it by yourself. Some people are built that way. Like I've met some entrepreneurs that are incredibly successful and they kind of just like doing it themselves and then they hire a bunch of people underneath them and that's just how it is. That's not how I'm wired. So Josh, Zach, and I have all known each other since we were around 5 years old, and Monk Island Ventures comes from a park that we used to play at when we were kids, and that's the holding company that we have. Uh, we have always put our relationship around friendship and family ahead of business. Uh, and honestly, money has never been an issue in terms of how we split it. It's split thirds, and we have multiple ventures going all the time, and that money just comes into that pool, and we split it out evenly. Um, we fairly early on started to come up with some core values, and we have what are called like our 5 F's, which are freedom, finances, friendship, family, and fun. And so those five core values is what we live by. And I think the other thing too is knowing uh, through experience, but also knowing this through you know decades and decades of data as it pertains to being in business. Very few decisions you make as an entrepreneur are absolutely catastrophic, like that you literally can't come back from. So I think we give each other grace as it pertains to, you know, um, our performance as well as the ideas and the things that we put forth that may or may not work. We also, if two of us feel really strongly about going after a business model, and the third one isn't that excited about it, well, if the other two really are going to put in the effort and are going to do the work, then the third one's just going to kind of go along for the ride. It doesn't mean that we don't talk about it and things like that, but that's just how it's been. And so, we've started over a dozen, SaaS products over the years. Most of them, failed. We did a Kickstarter and built out a smart water meter. That failed. And we raised a bunch of investment for that. And we have a digital marketing company and a software development company. We've got about 40 employees between those two. I kicked off Rainmaker early last year, and there's some couple other more kind of AI tech leading ideas that we're starting to work on now as well. But um, I'd say probably 70% of the things that we've built didn't make it.
Mm.
So that's just kind of the nature of the game. And yeah, would I have loved to have fallen into something like a Mark Zuckerberg and it just like took off and became worth billions? Sure. But the vast majority of us don't have that kind of an experience. And so what it is you've already talked about, like that being an entrepreneur, you're grinding it out. You eat, sleep, and breathe that, right? You're waking up at 2 a.m. thinking about, what's not working. And it isn't a 9 to 5. So having that journey with these two guys has been, yeah, just it's been fantastic, and it's added a ton to my experience. And we've been in business now for a long time, and we've learned a lot. And so, yeah, that's how I think about it.
If you look at the three of you together on an org chart and you had to qualifiably list one asset that sort of encompasses who you are, what are the three variables that each of the three of you represent in this ownership model?
If I was to try and nail it down to, like a single word, Zach, I would say is, thoughtful. Josh, um, I mean, the word that comes to my mind is caring, but I'd need to put a little bit of context around that. And then, um, for myself, I would maybe say like creative. But the way that it's built out, we've all have had roles where we've been president or CEO. So Zach is the CEO of Cloudburst, which does software development, working with entrepreneurs and founders. And then Agurian, I was the president of that. So I started that from scratch, and then built that up and kind of got uh, burned out on that industry. And so Josh ended up taking over the role of president, and the company has done an amazing job there. So, um, and we definitely, personality wise, Zach is super thoughtful. He likes thinking things through. He's really good with numbers. He's also, very, very creative. But I would say Josh and I are probably more um, irresponsible. Like we just want to jump into something and just start doing it. And so, there's a nice balance, I think, in the way that we all approach things. And, Josh has done an amazing job with, the Agurian team and bringing in leadership and bringing in, kind of executive level talent, way better than I would have done.
Yeah.
So, there's definitely aspects of each of us that are very, very different, but yet complementary.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and the reason I ask is there are a lot of people that I've been interacting with lately that are going into business with other partners, and there's so many variables that you have to consider. But at the end of the day, co-founding with somebody centers around trust and ego checking and brutal
Yeah.
honesty with each other. It's really about communication and understanding who you're getting into bed with.
Oh,
In terms of your businesses themselves, if you could just high level, what is it exactly at the core of all of them that you do?
Agurian is our digital marketing company. That's the oldest service-based company, and that one is really working with small but mighty marketing teams, generally companies that are generating 10 to 100 million in revenue, and is really just kind of focused on paid media, SEO, and analytics. So, one of the lessons that I learned in that first company that I had was I felt like we were a jack of all trades, master of none, right? And so we were too few people spread over too many services. And with Agurian, when I launched that, I said, you know what, we want to be really good in just a few areas. So just those three areas is where we concentrate. And even the word Agurian comes from the word augur. So back in Roman times, emperors would use augurs because they could read the will of the gods, and emperors wanted to ensure that the decisions that they made were met with favor, right, by the
Mhm.
gods. And so we made that word up, which is almost impossible to spell and say. Which we can table that for a different day. But what I wanted was to hire and create great teams that had really deep knowledge in those areas. And I think we did that successfully. So, and then Cloudburst does software development for entrepreneurs and founders. And so it's a very different market than what Agurian goes after. Cloudburst has been, over the last 7 years, and it's an existent kind of a fairly typical software development company, but has changed drastically in the last year and a half. So we're leaning way more into, utilizing AI. We're way more into, utilizing no code, low code, no code. And Josh, Zach, and I, we're non-technical founders, so none of us have ever known how to code. And so Cloudburst is really the software development company we wished we always had when we were entrepreneurs. And kind of as I was talking about, like the thoughtfulness, that comes from Zach. He invented something called the Shared Success Agreement. You can learn more about it at sharedsuccessagreement.org. We don't make any money on it. All it is, it's a way of a service provider and a customer and the like a founder working together, where maybe the founder hires a lawyer, and the lawyer is going to reduce their cost for a share of future revenue.
Mm,
So a shared success agreement is an alternative to debt or equity or a safe. It's very light, it's very easy, and it's something that, yeah, as a founder entrepreneur, you should check out, because I think it could be of high value. As well as if you're a service provider, you might start working with someone that can't afford you yet. Well, discount your services and then get a share of future revenue through a shared success agreement. So he invented that because one of our early pieces of software, we actually did that with a guy to help us build a piece of software in the early days of Monkey Island Ventures. This was before Cloudburst even existed. And so he kind of took that model and has applied it. And that's one of the ways that Cloudburst will work with some of the
mm.
entrepreneurs or founders that we work with. And then the last service-based company that we have is Rainmaker, and I've been doing a lot of kind of growth hacking through LinkedIn the last 6 or 7 years, and I really created a software and process that I was using that I felt other businesses could take advantage of and have LinkedIn become a revenue driver for their company. And I approached Josh and Zach early last year and said, "Hey, I think I could build a real business off of this," and they said, "Go for it." So I did. And so those are kind of the three businesses that provide a foundation for us to generate income for ourselves, our families, and our employees. And then, yeah, we're always have kind of a little skunk works going on where we're building out new things as well, generally around software. But
Hmm. I want to talk about Rainmaker specifically, if that's okay for a minute. And it's not just
yeah,
another sales tool. It's sort of like a philosophy-driven
absolutely.
aggregate for you, right? And so
Yes.
how do you think about modern sales, not just from a funnel perspective, but from we've talked about relationships from a relationship perspective. What does that
Yep.
sales mean to you?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. And I'll say my general philosophy, um, this is it, and I'm usually talking about it when I'm talking to a group around LinkedIn, and I'll say it the same way, which is there's three parts. The first part is being authentic to yourself and the brands that you represent, and I think most people do a good job of this, um, and it's kind of table stakes, especially for LinkedIn, right? Like if you're not being authentic on there, people can see through that. You're going to damage yourself and your brand. The second thing is approaching it with an educational mindset, because nobody wants to be sold on LinkedIn. You really want to have that educational mindset, and I think that's true outside of LinkedIn as well. But that's kind of the pitch that I'm using is you got to come in with this educational mindset. And then the last piece is and I put a lot of pressure on myself. And I would put the same pressure on any other entrepreneurs, founders, or anybody that sits in a sales and marketing seat, which is it's incumbent on you to know the pains and barriers that your prospects are trying to overcome. Okay. You need to know and understand what those things are. From that, you need to know what is it that they want to be educated on. And most importantly, what is it that you can teach, right? What can they learn from you? And I think that is really what opens up the opportunity for you to, build thought leadership, to build relationships, to lean into, creating content. And whether you're speaking on a podcast, whether you're speaking to a group, whether you're providing this kind of content through LinkedIn, these are areas in which you're able to build up yourself and your brand through authenticity, that educational mindset, and figuring out what it is your audience wants to learn from you. What can you teach?
That's funny you say that because in my mottos of social media, I always say educate, inspire, or entertain. Those should be the three things, or do all three of them if you can. That's even better.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So at the core, tell me about Rainmaker. How exactly how does it work? How would one utilize it to imbue these three philosophies: authenticity, education, pains and barriers, and prospects?
Yeah. So, the process that I use with Rainmaker, we have a software and process on the back end. So it's really just assisting my clients in not having to do all the different tasks manually. But if you do them manually, you will still get the exact same results. And so kind of that top layer is how I think about philosophy with the LinkedIn. There's a middle layer, which is around audience building. And, I'm typically using Sales Navigator to build out audiences. But you could still use, you could use Sales Navigator. You could buy that from LinkedIn. It's the sales tool. You could also use regular LinkedIn search to start identifying your prospects. But you got to start identifying who your ideal client prospects are, right? Your ICPs. And then once you know who they are, you could start building lists out through Sales Navigator, LinkedIn search. But there's a couple of growth hacks that you can also do on LinkedIn. One is LinkedIn events. So if you have a direct competitor doing a LinkedIn event, or maybe there's an industry organization putting on a LinkedIn event around a topic that your business solves for, if you go to that LinkedIn event and attend, click the attend button, you'll now be able to see everyone else that's also attending that event. So you could actually start to build a prospect list using LinkedIn search and using filters in that event and start identifying, founders, presidents, or maybe, direct, VPs of marketing or whatever it is that your ICPs are. You could actually start to build out a prospect list from that event, because these people are really publicly raising their hand and saying, this is who I am, and I'm interested in learning more about this topic, right? So
Mhm.
that's one way, is using LinkedIn events to start identifying people that are really further down the purchase path, because they're now starting to do diligence around, what it is that they're interested in. And you can find that out through attending, LinkedIn events in the ways that I've talked about. The other is using a person as a proxy. So if there's a thought leader that's posting content, and if they have a following on LinkedIn, if you reach out and to try and connect with them, if they connect back with you, and if their connections are open, you can actually use LinkedIn search or Sales Navigator to identify everybody that's a first connection to this thought leader, but is a second connection to you,
Mhm.
that has the attributes of the kinds of people that you'd want to connect with, knowing that they're most likely following that person because they want to learn more about that topic. Therefore, they'd be a good candidate for you to connect with to grow your business. So those are two kind of growth hacks. Yeah.
How are you finding out the attributes? I'm sorry, I'm confused on that piece.
So the filters are
These are your Rainmaker attributes. This is the software, or this is Sales Navigator?
this is Sales Navigator. Yep, yep. And so you're going in there, you're identifying, people by title, by
Got it.
company
Got
size,
it. Got it. I
by
thought you.
geography, like
I
all those kinds of things. Yeah.
got it. I thought you were going more in the psychometrics area. So tell
Oh,
me,
okay.
what does Rainmaker do specifically, though? Now.
Yeah. So that bottom layer now, right, is now once you've identified the audiences, it's about activating the audiences on LinkedIn. So the number one thing you want to do is grow out your network, right? Create more first degree connections. You want to do that week in and week out. Rainmaker is like automating out, creating more first degree connections through your LinkedIn account, as an example.
Is it
Uh,
similar to like a Dripify concept?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yep, it's
Got it.
similar to that. Yep,
Got it.
yep.
Got it.
So
Okay,
it's
cool.
going out and it's creating more first degree connections, and really, ideally, you're connecting with around 125 people a week, 500 people a month, reaching out to connect, and you'll get generally like a 20 to 30% connection rate back. I typically never ever use a connection message. You're actually going to get a higher connection rate if you don't use a connection message, unless there's something very specific that you're calling out, like maybe you're have both just attended the exact same conference and you weren't able to connect in person there, and you want to connect on LinkedIn. Or of course, if you've been referred, or if you met somebody in person and you're connecting with them, later on, yes, of course, use a connection message. But if you are identifying, a group of people and you want to just start connecting with those kinds of people to more en masse, then don't use a connection message. You will get a better connection rate if you just don't use a connection message. And if somebody doesn't connect within 30 days, then withdraw the invite. And you can then try reaching out to connect with them again at a later date. So that's kind of the baseline of like foundational activities that you should be doing every single week, is growing out your first connections, because
Mm.
everything else you do on LinkedIn benefits from you having a larger audience. And so, the three kind of basic campaigns that I'm running for myself and all my clients are messaging campaigns, right? So after someone connects with you, giving them a thank you message, a day or two later, not selling anything, not even trying to help. And then messages to and beyond are messages that should be very value focused, right? Where maybe you're asking a really thoughtful question. Maybe you're inviting them to participate in a LinkedIn poll. Maybe you are giving them an asset that your company built out. Maybe you're providing them with an asset some third party had created. You think that would be of high value to them. Maybe you want to invite them to an event or a live stream on LinkedIn. So it's really building out that first degree network. So whenever you do any of those activities I just talked about, you'll have a larger audience of people in which to draw from. And by doing this repeatedly over time and continuing to add value, continuing to lean into the philosophy we talked about, you are going to set yourself up for success because you're going to hit that marker of having 7 to 10 touches with someone before they start to feel comfortable with you, before they start to see you as a thought leader, before they start to see you as someone that they would want to do business with. And that's the beauty of LinkedIn. I would take a LinkedIn first degree connection any day over somebody's email address. And so because of all these different ways that you can really touch someone. So that I'll pause there. I do want to quickly talk about LinkedIn live streams as a B2B strategy, but I'll pause there to see if you have any.
I mean, I have a lot of questions. Thank you for that breakdown. That was very, very invigorating in terms of some and insightful in some of the things that we're doing. So it'd be helpful for me as well. I guess my takeaway from everything you just said is sales isn't necessarily about talking louder. It's really about listening better and connecting deeper is kind of like my takeaway from that.
Yeah, and I think what disarms people immediately is when you are not asking for anything, you're giving. And if what you're giving is of high value, meaning you're providing something of educational value, then you're on the right track. So I'll give an example, and I can kind of marry this into LinkedIn live stream. So when I kicked off Rainmaker, one of the ways that I wanted to grow the visibility for myself and the business was through LinkedIn live streams. And one of the things that I've realized is that number one, my strategy is start creating some different verticals in the first connections you make. So right now I'm connecting with fractionals, sales executives, founders, EOS implementers, and business coaches. Okay. So I have those different verticals and I'm building out first connections with them. Then what you want to do is pick out a live stream topic that you can do on LinkedIn repeatedly that will be evergreen for at least the rest of the year. So my topic is, learn how to grow your network leads and sales using LinkedIn. That's the main one. I built the original deck a little over a year ago, and I've made small improvements to it over time. But the benefit of this is that I'm doing the same live stream pretty much once a week. And these different target markets, these different verticals that I've identified, they are getting an invite to this live stream once probably around every like 6 to 8 weeks. Okay. And when they get to the event page on LinkedIn, it's customized to that specific title, right? So I'm actually literally calling out where it'll say, LinkedIn growth webinar for founders or for sales executives or for EOS implementers. So even though my content, my deck is 99% the same, I'm just customizing it a little bit to that vertical. So when they get to the event page, not only do they feel the content is compelling, but they feel like it was built out just for their industry or their title. The other thing is when you use LinkedIn events and you send LinkedIn event invites to people, it comes in as an alert. It doesn't come in as a direct message. So it's getting bundled into all the other alerts they're getting. The benefit of that is it's almost impossible to burn out your target audiences by continuing to invite them to the same high value topic that you keep presenting on. So I've looked at some of the messages that I've sent out to attendees after the event, and I've seen some people register for the same event like 3 or 4 times in a row. And
Hmm.
so it's just a phenomenal tactic. And the last thing that I will say about live streams is that LinkedIn loves live streams. LinkedIn will help you by promoting it to your followers, your connections, the attendees. When the live stream is done, LinkedIn will notify a whole bunch of your first connections that you were just live with this event. Even people that you didn't even invite are going to see that as an alert. And then the thing that you should be doing after every live stream is message all the attendees of the live stream, right? Even if they didn't, you don't know who actually viewed the live stream or viewed the recording of the live stream on the event page, but you know who all the attendees are. You know all the people that raised their hand and said, "Hey, I'm interested in attending your live stream." When someone clicks the attend button on your live stream, they've now crossed this threshold where they see you as someone trustworthy enough to press attend. They see that your content is compelling enough that they press attend. So now they're opting into you. Once that happens, when I send a message out to all the attendees, I'll say, "Hey, Devo, thanks again for registering for the LinkedIn live stream I led. Here's a link to the recording." And I link back to the event page where they can watch the recording, and that lives there forever. Underneath that is now your opportunity to put in a call to action. And I've tried different ones and used different ones. One of my favorites, though, is where I'll say, "If you ever want to chat LinkedIn strategy, feel free to grab some time convenient for you here." And I give them my Calendly link. Okay. Because of them opting into you, because you are providing educational information, by responding in that way and giving them your Calendly in that format, it doesn't feel salesy or spammy or icky in any way. It's just a next natural step they could potentially take if they want to after they've opted in to learn from you through a live stream. And so
Mm,
I think live streams are one of the best B2B tactics that I've ever found, because if you do it in the way that I talked about, where you're using recurring content, you're not having to keep creating new content all the time.
mm,
And if you're getting attendees every single time you do it, you know that your topic is still, accurate, and that the audience is still accurate because you're getting attendees. And so I think it's just a phenomenal
mm.
strategy. So that's one of the things. So, Rainmaker will assist in, building out like what audience do you want to invite, and then it'll automate out, like the invites to really drive attendance for the live streams. Again, you can do all this manually if you want to, but
Mm.
it's just that's one of the things that'll automate out. So.
Well, as someone who already uses Dripify, I can tell you all the different steps that automates and systematizes for you, so it streamlines the whole thing. That's a
Yep.
lot of gold that you just dropped. Thank you for sharing that. In our last part of the call, and I'd love to dive into some of those LinkedIn strategies. I think it'd be worth our time to actually, and I'm just going to shameless plug here. I'd love to
Mhm.
have you on as a guest speaker for one of my mastermind groups.
Oh,
They're
do that.
all entrepreneurs and potential
Yeah.
buyers for Rainmaker. So it'd
Yeah.
be great to sort of, if you could do almost like that. You just did a crash course on how you're fundamentally using LinkedIn for sales, connections, relationships, that sort of stuff. If you're interested, I'll get you some more information on it. So,
Yeah, no, yeah,
you,
I would love to do that, and just opening up to anybody. I love talking about this. There's nothing, the I'm totally transparent with the strategies I use,
I can
because
see that.
people can go and do this manually if they want, and if it becomes a burden, then they can talk to me. But yeah, I love talking to anybody one on one or groups, and so yeah.
It's really interesting. You said, you're transparent and you want to add value. And a lot of people say that. It's become very cliche, sort of like, yeah, I'm a servant of the people. But you attend some of their events and it's like, dude, there was no servitude whatsoever that just went on.
Right.
And I literally just had an experience of this. We just launched our first retreat ever, me and my partner.
Oh,
And
good for you.
yeah, I know, really excited about it. And I want to talk to you about it. But we
Yeah.
attended an event because we know nothing about retreats. We just sort of have this idea of building communities, right? And that's
Yeah.
what I've been working on for the last 5 years is
Love that.
building a community of people around me,
Yeah.
people that actually are, and I've come up with these like fancy lexicon, soul driven, purpose driven entrepreneurs, and that sounds great on paper, but at the core of it, I'm not really sure exactly who or what I'm looking for, other than I'm looking for people that I invite on my podcast that like having
Mm.
really cool conversations and
Yeah.
wouldn't be upset about sharing a glass of whiskey with me around a campfire and having meaningful conversations. At the crux of it, that's basically who I'm looking for. And so
Yeah.
we launched this retreat, right? And it's actually literally going to happen in the forests of Maya, Mexico. It's like just outside of Tulum.
Mm.
It's in
Mm.
November. We reserved this entire retreat. It's really cool concept on paper. Right now,
Yeah.
I'm trying to attract the right people for it.
Right.
But anyhow, where I'm going with this is that I've been attending different types of experts who are giving away free ways to like fill your retreat. And I went to one last week and I dropped a decent amount of change to do this. And she literally added zero value to any
That's so
point. And I'm
frustrating.
just like, you're not here to serve. You're literally, and throughout the entire session that she was giving away for free, she was just
Yeah.
constantly like needling us to buy. Well, if you want this actual trip, you have to purchase here. If you want, and I was like, you did not add any value whatsoever in this entire 2 day, 3 day, whatever it was, webinar that you said you were giving away the secrets. All you did is sell to us. So it's really important to sort of, I don't know where I'm going with this, like the wheat from the shaft, to borrow a parable from the
Yeah,
Bible. It's like,
agreed. Yeah,
how do you
yeah,
sort of find people in your circle that you really want to connect with and really add value to them and show that you're here to build community around that? And it sounds like you're really doing that. So I really appreciate the integrity that you just brought to that whole gold mine you just dropped. Last part of the show. Sorry, my show could go on for so many hours. Nobody would listen to it, but I try to get everything into an hour. In
yeah,
terms of who you are, inner work, entrepreneurship, you mentioned something earlier in the show about, you 70% of businesses or 70% of the things that you've launched have failed. But it's in those failures, right? That if you're open to it, you can actually learn something about it and grow and expand and sort of reiterate again.
yeah.
What has failure in this 70% of your, and that number is just a number, but what has failure taught you as an entrepreneur and how you've kind of rebounded to build something other and be more innovative or whatever it was? Just a little bit on that, if you don't mind for a second.
Yeah, no, great question. So, yeah, again, one of the things that I've realized with failure is that most decisions aren't catastrophic. What I found in learning this lesson the hard way is a lot of the ideas we had were
Hmm.
brand new, essentially, right? They were there wasn't really an established market for it. And so we would go in, we think we would have an idea. We would even do diligence on the front end to try and see if people would want this kind of thing. I read the book, The Mom Test. I did all these different
Hmm.
things. And we would launch it and it'd just be crickets, right? And so it's not fun working on businesses that don't generate revenue. And so that's why, you know, um, leaning into a business that is already has an established industry, there's nothing wrong with that. You want to reduce the chance of failure. So I think that's one of the lessons that I learned, in going through the failure is that, it's okay to not launch something net new. It doesn't have to be, some kind of business that's going to, massively scale or fail. That's just not a great spot to be put in. So, I really have enjoyed, I think, the aspect of having good, solid businesses that generate revenue and income, but then also give us the opportunity to kind of play around in on the side.
Mhm. I love that. When somebody lands on your LinkedIn or hears your name or they listen to this podcast, what do you want them to associate it with?
Definitely entrepreneurship. I would hope that um, you know people would see that I'm an open book and that I'm very approachable and that I'm here to help. I mean, one of the missions of Monkey Island Ventures is to help support and create as many successful entrepreneurs as we can. And so that's one of the reasons why I love coming on to podcasts like this is, if any of my knowledge and experience can help another, fellow entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur, then, I'm living a lot of my life's mission right there.
That's great. I love that. Beyond exits, beyond metrics, what does success look like to you now?
Day to day, I would say a reduced stress level, right? Like if I can just live life more at peace, and just really live it in the present moment and just truly enjoy the time that I have with, friends and family and enjoying the journey of building businesses, that to me would be um, living life the way that I want to live it. Yeah.
I thought you were going to fall back on those values that you cited earlier, friendship, finance, family, freedom, and fun as
hmm
success.
Those for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, the way it's funny because the way that I think about those is very much in relationship with Josh and Zach.
Mm,
Uh, but you're right. Like if, for some reason I was no longer in business with them and that was, um, just the way that I want to live my life, then I think you're spot on. That
I love
that's
it. It's interesting, and we're not going to go into that, but this whole idea, those words, freedom, finance, friendship, fun, family, I think I had them right. Did I get
yeah.
them right?
Yep. Yep.
They mean different things to different people, and it's always fun to sort of play this game and like, what does this word mean to you and hear people's interpretation of it. I did a poll on LinkedIn a while back, and then I interviewed I want to say like 25 or 30 people that had on the podcast. And I've been doing this for almost 5 years now. So I've collected a bevy of people. And just to get the different variety that people think about leadership or different words, it's just fantastic. And there's so many things you can learn, the layers of it. To any entrepreneur who's listening to the show right now, who might be in a season of doubt, who's in this, what the F am I doing right now? How did I get myself into this? I had a conversation with the guy yesterday. He's like, I thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And he was like near tears, but I don't have any idea what I'm doing. It's like, I was like, none of us know what we're doing, man. Like, I make up this stuff every single day. Like, every day is a hack for me. So, like,
Yeah.
you're in good company. Trust me. You just have to stay with the process. What's the one message you'd want them to take away with after listening to this podcast today?
I came up with a saying a few years ago, which is everybody's making up everything all the time. And that's exactly. And it doesn't matter whether you're Tim Cook at Apple or whether it's, you and I here. Everybody, uh, I mean, just in life, we're all making it up, but especially in the business world, we're all making it up as we go.
But
Right.
I
Oh,
put parenting in that category.
yeah, everything. Yeah, for sure. So, but I mean, I would use that really as a stepping stone to, get started. If you're not an entrepreneur, like get going. I think, the experience that you just talked about, like we're all going through the same stuff. Like as an entrepreneur, we're all facing the same issues. We all have the same self-doubts. Like it's a hard road, but it's a road worth living. When I'm 90 years old, I want to look back and say, yep, 70% of the things I did failed, but
Yeah.
that other 30% succeeded, and I learned all these valuable lessons, and I was able to create this kind of a life for myself. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of what you were talking about just now is rings very true, and I think that's a really inclusive, disarming thing to realize that what everybody else is going through the same stuff, and so I just need to realize this is part of the journey.
Yeah. When I'm 90 years old, that's my legacy I hope to have left is that I built a community that has sustained and built itself around each other in an ecosystem where people can continue to grow and feed off each other. That's really, I didn't realize that was my life mission until a while ago, actually not too long ago. And then I was like,
Yeah,
this feels really cool. And I don't know, I hope I'm adding value. That's the one thing I tell my kids.
yeah,
Don't just be consumers, man. Like in every situation, how can you add some value to the situation, whether it's with your friends or just walking through the kitchen? If you see a sink full of dishes, don't
yeah,
just look at them and keep rolling through. Like stop and
right,
clean a few of them. Like
exactly.
everybody needs to be a contributor. It's an ecosystem. So it sounds like you're doing all those things, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the lab today, and thank you for all the gold nuggets that you dropped with us.
Yeah, no, happy to. And thank you again for putting on podcasts like this. Thanks for building out communities. The world needs more of that. And thanks for being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, my pleasure. If people want to find you, Colin, what's the best place to connect with you? LinkedIn, social media, websites? What's the best way?
Yeah, so I'm the only Colin Hirdman on the internet. So you can certainly find me on LinkedIn. You can Google me. If you go to monkeyislandventures.com or rainmakergrows.com, there's a free consult button that books Calendly time directly with me through rainmakergrows.com. And I'm happy to chat with anybody anytime.
I love that. And all that information will be in the show notes. So anybody who didn't catch that on the audio side, it'll be listed below. So, Colin, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you for your time, and look forward to staying connected with you.
Love it. Thanks so much for having me.
This is what I love about my podcast. Real humans doing real work. And Colin is a builder, he's a connector and a reminder that you can grow your business without losing your soul along the way. And it's something that I'm really trying to figure out myself. It's taken me for a while to do that. I didn't always follow that metric. And I'm just excited to be able to have the opportunity to meet people like Colin. If you want more from Colin, and trust me, you do, please go check out Rainmaker. All of those notes are here below in the show somewhere. I'm pointing. I don't even know where I'm pointing. Follow him on LinkedIn. We do. The guy shows up with value, not vanity. And that's what I love about people like Colin. If this episode sparked something in you, share it, text a founder friend, let them know about the show, and then DM me, man. I'd love to have you on the show. If you're doing something of significance on this planet, big or small, or someone that you know, or someone that you've recently connected with, get them in touch with us. The only way we continue this idea of community is by broadcasting this information to the audience, and that's how I use social media, is to add value and share people's insights and share people's value, because we grow together. We were not designed to live in silos. We are a community, a species of community and collaboration and creation. And I'd love to keep this conversation going and keep this whole idea alive, because business at the end of the day is about relationships. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And it's something I'm spending exorbitant amount of time doing right now. So anyhow, I know you have choices when it comes to podcasts. Thank you for being my guest, my listener on the show today. Share this with somebody, and I will see you on the next episode. Sayonara. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon.